Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Davisville Car House. Thank you for joining us for today's announcement. I'm Jon Burnside, the new TTC Chair. Before we begin, could Natalie please lead us in the land acknowledgement?
Thank you and good morning. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Now I'd like to introduce our platform guests. The Honourable Chrystia Freeland, Deputy Prime Minister of Canada and Minister of Finance. The Honourable Dominic LeBlanc, Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, Infrastructure and Communities. The Honourable Carolyn Mulroney, Ontario's Minister of Transportation and Minister of Francophone Affairs. The Honourable Stan Cho, Ontario's Associate Minister of Transportation. MP Julie Zarovich from Davenport. MPP Robin Martin for Eglinton Lawrence. His Worship John Tory, Mayor of the City of Toronto, and of course, TTC CEO Rick Leary. Today we celebrate the importance of investing in our future, in transit, and in the sustainability of our beautiful city. Safe, reliable, and accessible transit is vitally important for the success of any city, especially one as vibrant as Toronto. It means jobs, access to essential services, mobility, and work opportunities. I'm so grateful to our partners at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels of government for their support for transit and for helping to ensure the TTC is able to serve the customers every day. I'd now like to invite the Honourable Chrystia Freeland to the podium to kick off our event.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je tiens d'abord à souligner que nous sommes réunis sur les territoires traditionnels de nombreuses nations, notamment les Mississaugas de Credit, les Anishinaabeg, les Chippewa, les Haudenosaunee, et les Wendat. So it is great to be here back home in Toronto with so many wonderful colleagues. Wonderful to have the Minister of Infrastructure, Dominic LeBlanc, Minister Mulroney, Mayor Tory, Councillors Sachs and Burnside, my neighbour as an MP, Julie Jarowitz, and a strong team from the city and from the province and, of course, from the TTC. So I am here as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, but mostly I am here as a constituency MP. I am really, really glad we're making this announcement and making this investment in the TTC and particularly in the Bloor-Yonge Station. John, the Mayor, and I were talking on the way here, and we pointed out really to each other, this is the single biggest, busiest subway station in the city and therefore in the country. It's one of the busiest stations in North America. And this investment is really going to make the lives of a lot of people who live in my riding and across this wonderful city much, much better. Even on a Saturday morning, so I spend most of my time in Ottawa. On Saturdays, my kids go, well, I have one kid left in Ukrainian school in Etobicoke, and I will be at the Bloor-Yonge station having dropped my son off in Etobicoke on Saturday morning, tomorrow. And so I can tell you, even on a Saturday morning, it is an extremely busy station. It's maybe the crossroads, the heart of Toronto. There are families, there are people going to work, there are people on a Saturday going to have fun. And that is the sign of a healthy, thriving city. It shows why public transit is so important. And it also shows why these investments are so urgently needed. That's why I am proud to announce today that our government is investing $500 million into capacity improvements at the Bloor-Yonge Station. En collaboration avec le gouvernement de la ministre Mulroney, le maire Tory et la ville de Toronto, nous construisons de nouvelles plateformes et nous élargissons celles existantes afin de réduire l'encombrement aux heures de pointe. Nous améliorons l'accessibilité grâce à des entrées et des sorties sans obstacles et nous ajoutons de nouveaux ascenseurs, escaliers mécaniques et même plusieurs nouvelles œuvres artistiques publiques. Toronto is getting bigger every day. And as our government works to create more jobs, welcome more skilled new Canadians, and build more affordable housing, Toronto's appeal to the world will only continue to grow. In 2019, we announced $10.4 billion for 4 major public transit infrastructure projects here in the GTA: the Scarborough Subway Extension, Eglinton Crosstown West, the Ontario Line, and the Yonge North Subway Extension. When complete, these projects will provide more than 6 million people with better access to services and public transit options across 1,200 kilometers. People here in Toronto need and deserve transit infrastructure that grows with them. Our government has and will continue to invest in Toronto's transit infrastructure, including as part of the billions of dollars in predictable funding we announced for communities across Canada in 2021. The investments we're making today will be critical to the future of Toronto's economy and the daily lives of hundreds of thousands of Torontonians. They will help to build a transit system that is reliable for everyone, accessible for everyone, safe for everyone, and a Toronto that we can all continue to be so very, very proud of. So, as Deputy Finance Minister, as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, but above all as the local MP, and as someone who lives and loves this wonderful city, I'm really, really looking forward to the completion of this great project. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister Freeland. I'd like to now invite the Honourable Dominic LeBlanc to speak.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Thank you very much. Thanks, Councillor Burnside, for the welcome. I am, as my colleague said, very happy to be here with a terrific group of partners for our government. I'm particularly happy to be here with a local MP, Chrystia Freeland, who is our Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. And for me, it's a privilege to participate with my colleague in an announcement that will be so important to her community and her city. And Chrystia, I'm really, really pleased to be here with you in Toronto. I'm also pleased to be here with Minister Mulroney. Caroline and I have talked about the importance of investing collaboratively in these kinds of significant projects. Her government has been a great partner for the Government of Canada, as the Deputy Prime Minister noted, in many of these big projects. It's the first time I've had since becoming Infrastructure Minister an opportunity to be here with Minister Mulroney in Ontario at a very significant announcement, and I'm happy, obviously, to be here. And Mayor Tory, congratulations on your re-election. Chrystia and I were joking that we're a bit envious of our colleagues that have predictable 4-year mandates like Mayor Tory, and I would say like Minister Mulroney and her colleagues, who of course won a large majority government a few months ago. This is, for our government, an example of the kind of investment that, as the Deputy Prime Minister said, is very important for the economy of Canada's biggest city. It's very important, therefore, for the economy of the country. It's important for the quality of life of the citizens who live and visit the great city of Toronto. And for our government, it's an example of the kind of partnership that we need to continue. Comme ma collègue a bien dit, le transport en commun fait partie intégrante du bien-être de nos collectivités. Il assure la croissance de notre économie, crée de bons emplois et relie les Canadiens au travail, à l'école, à leurs familles et à leurs amis. Et on a vu sans aucune question l'importance du réseau de la TTC au cours des 2 dernières années. We have made and will continue to make key investments in Toronto's public transit infrastructure to help build a strong, sustainable economy, create more jobs, establish more opportunities for families and businesses in this region. The City of Toronto is an important economic and social innovator for our country. Mayor Tory and I and his colleagues at City Hall have often spoken about the importance of investing in infrastructure, and the good news is that with the partnership with the Government of Ontario and Minister Mulroney and the renewal of our federal infrastructure programs in 2023, I hope our government is in a position to continue to invest in this great city and in ways that support the people of Toronto, and that's why I'm particularly happy to be here today. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister LeBlanc, and now the Honourable Carolyn Mulroney.
Well, good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. I am so pleased to be here today with Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, with Minister LeBlanc, Mayor Tory and Chair Burnside, along with my colleague, Associate Minister Cho, my friend MPP Robin Martin, as well as many other elected officials, for this very exciting announcement. Now, previous governments have left Ontario with a massive infrastructure deficit that impacts how we live every day. Here in the Greater Toronto Area, you've probably experienced firsthand the congestion and overcrowding on our subways, streetcars, and buses. These are the consequences of decades of governments refusing to build. But under the leadership of Premier Ford and with the help of our partners across all levels of government, things are changing. To deliver the transit that Ontarians need and deserve, it's imperative that all levels of government be at the table. And that's why today's announcement is so important. Pour offrir le transport en commun dont les Ontariens ont besoin et qu'ils méritent, il est impératif que tous les ordres de gouvernement soient à la table. Et c'est pourquoi l'annonce d'aujourd'hui est si importante. The TTC's Line 1 subway is already one of the busiest in North America, averaging approximately 210,000 boardings per day. And as we build long overdue subway projects across the GTA, like the Ontario line, ridership will only continue to increase. It's projected that by 2029, the Bloor-Yonge Subway Station could see up to 280,000 trips per day. And so we need our infrastructure to keep up. As part of Premier Ford's plan to create a world-class transit system across the GTA, we are providing nearly $450 million in funding for the City of Toronto's Bloor-Yonge Capacity Improvement Project. This project will help reduce overcrowding and congestion at the station, to improve commuters' experience and accommodate current and future ridership demands. Dans le cadre du plan du Premier ministre Ford, visant à créer un système de transport en commun de classe mondiale dans la région du Grand Toronto, nous fournissons un financement de près de 450 millions de dollars pour le projet d'amélioration de la capacité de la station Bloor-Yonge de la Ville de Toronto. Ce projet permettra de réduire le surpeuplement et la congestion de la gare, afin d'améliorer l'expérience des navetteurs et de répondre aux demandes actuelles et futures. The collaboration between our government and our federal and municipal partners has been unprecedented. All three levels of government are working together at the table to deliver the largest transit expansion in Canadian history, starting with the joint funding that we're announcing today. Together, we're getting shovels in the ground to build the future of transit for generations to come. Thank you very much. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Minister Mulroney. I'd now like to invite His Worship Mayor Tory to speak.
Well, thank you, Chair John, and good morning, everyone. And may I begin on a sad note by expressing my deep sadness at the event which took place at the High Park Station yesterday. The victim and her family have our sincere condolences. The TTC remains a very safe transit system as we talk today about expanding it by any measure, but there's always more to be done, and I will meet with Mr. Leary and with the police chief. I've discussed this with both of them to discuss some existing plans we have for 2023 to increase the presence and monitoring in the system, but also to discuss additional ways in which we can address this concern. And I'm pleased, obviously, to answer questions after we finish dealing with this matter today. Today, we are pleased to confirm major improvements to the Bloor-Yonge Subway Station. And I would like to thank everyone for being here and for their partnership. And that includes the two federal ministers here today. And I'm happy that this is in Minister Freeland's constituency. And it is also in the constituency of my colleague, Councillor Diane Sachs, who is here today, joining Councillor Burnside, of course, as representing the City Council. And of course, I'm very pleased to be here with the Honourable Carolyn Mulroney, our Provincial Transportation Minister, and with Jonathan Marriott, who's the chair of our TTC Advisory Committee on Accessibility. And this new Bloor-Yonge Station will have all the very best in terms of accessibility. And of course, I want to make mention of Rick Leary, who is the outstanding CEO of the TTC. As was mentioned by Minister Mulroney in particular, the City, in partnership with the province and the federal government, is making remarkable progress at getting on with building transit after a period of many years when almost none was built. There were decades went by where less like a handful of subway stations were added to the system. In the recent municipal election that Minister LeBlanc made reference to, voters across the city made it very clear that they want to see that progress continue. They insisted that that progress continue, and they gave me a mandate across the city to make sure that we move transit forward as quickly as possible. Great cities have great transit, and we need to expand our transit system to make up for the decades of neglect. We're doing that by working together, and that means investing in our existing transit system, and that's what today is all about. Toronto's transit system is one of the busiest in North America, serving hundreds of thousands, in fact, more than a million, well more than a million of our residents every day, 500 million people annually, 500 million people served by this transit system. The size and the scale of this transit system and the number of people it serves is what makes it unique in all of Canada. And this is a point that I make repeatedly with the Government of Canada in talks concerning the impacts of COVID. There is nothing in this country anywhere close to the size and the scale of this transit system. And as a result, the impacts of COVID had a disproportionate impact on the transit system in this city. The expansion of Bloor-Yonge Station, the busiest station in the TTC network and the busiest in all of Canada, is a key part of our unprecedented transit extension plan. And I say that because the expansion in capacity at Bloor-Yonge is necessary to accommodate even something like the north extension to the Yonge Street subway line. That is going to put more people on the Yonge Street subway and create the need for one of the busiest interchanges, namely Bloor and Yonge, to be able to accommodate more people. Before COVID-19, 220,000 people passed through this station on any given day, and that compares to a much smaller number. 400,000 is what's projected to pass through this station in the years to come, and that compares, for example, to 800,000 people who use the Montreal transit system across the entire system in one day. So this station will accommodate 400,000 people when expanded, compared to something like Montreal, where there's 800,000 people in total on their entire system. So we're working to make sure that we're ready for that increased ridership. These partnership announcements see everyone playing their part. The City of Toronto has allocated more than $500 million. In fact, it's $564 million. People often will say that we all always ask for money, and we do, where it's appropriate to invest in the country's economic engine. But in this case, alongside the investments that are put in place by the other two governments that they've announced today, the City of Toronto itself will allocate more than $500 million in its budget, and that will make sure that we can expand the eastbound platform for Line 2, because, of course, the two subways meet at Bloor and Yonge, reconfigure the existing platform for westbound train traffic, expand both platforms on Line 1, the Yonge University subway line, and ensure, as I mentioned, that the station is fully accessible. Once this project is done, riders traveling through the Bloor-Yonge station will experience more frequent service and less crowded platforms. As we improve the capacity of Bloor-Yonge to handle the traffic, we will be able to further increase the capacity of the line, the number of trains and the frequency of trains, as did the investment in our automatic signal system do the same. I'm thrilled that our partners in the provincial and federal governments share the same enthusiasm and commitment to this project that we do, and I thank them for their investment in our world-class transit system. It's only possible for us to do this, as you can tell from the division of the responsibility, which is basically a third, a third, and a third. It's only possible we can bring about this crucial investment in Bloor-Yonge because the three governments are working together. I'm proud to work as mayor on a number of things that have the three governments working together to get things done. People expect us to work together. Torontonians, through the pandemic, had reliable partners in the Government of Canada and the Government of Ontario. The housing support led by the Government of Canada has been unprecedented and is making a difference in terms of our ability to address homelessness. Thousands of units that are in place now that weren't in place 2 years ago with people living in them who were previously either in shelters or in encampments. And we have to continue that work together in order to ensure a strong economic recovery for this city. The ministers mentioned the importance of the Toronto economy to the nation's economy. And people don't like it when I mention that in other parts of the country, but the fact is it's true. As goes the Toronto economy, this will have a significant impact on the Toronto economy. Just last week, the Government of Ontario reassured us that they will be stepping up and coming to the table to support the City of Toronto with 1/3 of the funds needed to cover our present $700 million plus shortfall, a big portion of which has arisen due to reduced transit ridership during the pandemic. I'm hopeful that our partners in the federal government here with us today will follow through on their campaign commitment in writing to support us in dealing with this entirely pandemic-related shortfall to make sure that Torontonians can both have a strong and sustainable transit system and can at the same time see a strong economic recovery for this city. Je remercie nos partenaires fédéraux et provinciaux de nous avoir rejoints dans ce projet et rappelle particulièrement au gouvernement du Canada que la solidité financière de la TTC et de Toronto est importante pour l'ensemble du Canada et pour son rétablissement après la pandémie. This is a great day for transit riders. It's something that will take a while for us to do this work, but it's starting right away. It's a great day for the TTC, and it's a great day for Toronto. I look forward to using the new Bloor-Yonge interchange myself and to seeing thousands of other people do it and to seeing that work well advanced during my own term in office. But more importantly, I look forward to seeing how this expanded station at Bloor-Yonge is going to make a commute better for thousands upon thousands, millions of people from right across the GTA. And so I say again to our good partners who have been with us on so many different things here today, Minister Mulroney, Minister LeBlanc, and Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, thank you for investing, continuing to invest in the City of Toronto. Merci.
Thank you, everyone. If we can just gather for a group photo, after which we will take questions.
Just more closer together? Just take okay.
6 feet apart, tell them.
Yeah. Yeah. You did a very good job. You named everyone.
I love that. A bunch of politicians taking photos.
Rick, you got to go.
Of course. There we go. Get a shot just for boss. Thank you. There you go.
People love is a bunch of politicians in a photo.
Yeah.
That's why
Their
everybody.
dream.
That's why everybody came this morning.
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
Selected out.
That's why you ran, Krista.
I don't think this is, oh, okay, we'll now take questions from the media. We'll try and get through everyone, so please one question and state your name and outlet before asking your question. There's a microphone right here. I also have a handheld mic that I can walk around with. One question.
Yeah, good morning. This question is for Minister Mulroney. Morning, Minister. Good to see you again. Ever since the latest delay on the Eglinton Crosstown was announced, we've been repeatedly trying to get further information about what specifically is holding up this project, what the new time frame is for opening, and you know, we haven't been given the details yet. And you know, I can't help but look at the Ottawa LRT inquiry. Justice Horgan says the public has the right to receive, quote, regular and honest communications from the government. So my question is this. Will you commit to asking Ontario government staff or Metrolinx staff to provide a technical briefing about what specifically is holding up this project so the public and reporters can get further information, something that's regularly done at all levels of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I know that people are so frustrated by this project. It's been going on for a very long time. We inherited this project from the previous government. And there are technical issues that still need to be worked out. And you mentioned Justice Horrigan's report, and he put forward over 100 recommendations on what went wrong with the Ottawa LRT. And one of the things that he pointed out is trying to rush a project before it's safe to open. And so we want to make sure that both Crosslinks and Metrolinks work out those technical issues. We all want it to open as soon as possible. Our government has been clear with Metrolinks and Crosslinks. We want it to open as soon as possible. People are frustrated, but they deserve a system that is that operates well and that operates safely when it does. And that has been our focus since the beginning.
Thank you. Next question. Do you want to? Oh, yeah, you can use that mic.
Hi, good morning. This is for Minister LeBlanc, and if you don't mind answering in English and in French, please. Yesterday, Health Minister Duclos suggested there's been more progress made on healthcare reforms than the premiers are willing to admit publicly. Is he right? Has there been a breakthrough, but for political reasons no one wants to say?
Je vais commencer en français. Moi, je suis entièrement d'accord avec mon collègue, le ministre Duclos, et j'espère que ma collègue, la ministre Freeland, sera d'accord aussi. Nous avons des discussions encourageantes avec les provinces. Nous partageons énormément d'objectifs en commun. Nous nous sommes engagés d'investir davantage dans un système de soins de santé publique. Il s'agit de trouver la meilleure façon pour s'assurer qu'on a des résultats, que les patients, leurs familles, les gens qui travaillent dans le système de santé s'attendent de nous tous. Moi, je ne pense pas, je partage évidemment pas l'idée cynique qu'on attend une annonce pour des raisons politiques. On n'est pas rendu du tout à l'étape d'une entente, mais on est rendu, je crois, sur une piste qui va nous amener, j'espère, à une entente parce qu'on reconnaît l'importance de cette question. Et moi, hier soir, j'ai soupé ici à Toronto avec le premier ministre de Terre-Neuve et Labrador. Évidemment, ça faisait partie de la conversation. J'ai parlé avec le premier ministre de la Nouvelle-Écosse hier aussi. Alors, c'est des discussions qui sont en cours et qui sont davantage de plus en plus positives. So I obviously share Jean-Yves Duclos' view that we are seeing in the conversations with provinces and territories around the healthcare system some very encouraging discussions. We have made clear, and the Prime Minister has made clear, and the Finance Minister, that we're prepared to increase federal support for public health care. We recognize the vital importance to Canadians of an accessible, world-class public health care system. We've also said that as we look to increase federal investments, we want to ensure that we obtain the results together, collectively, as governments, that Canadians expect of their healthcare system: better access, a world-class healthcare system that, frankly, Canadians should be proud of. I'm encouraged by the conversations we've had. I had dinner with Premier Fury of Newfoundland and Labrador in Toronto yesterday. We obviously talked about this, spoke to the Premier of Nova Scotia. These are ongoing conversations. I know the Prime Minister, of course, was with Premier Ford earlier this week. So I think we're in a place where we can continue to do the important work Canadians expect of us, and I'm not pessimistic at all about the results of our collective efforts.
My follow-up is to Minister Freeland, and again, English and French, if you don't mind. Because there's no First Minister's meeting, should we assume your next budget won't be factoring in larger or long-term increases in health transfers?
I would urge people not to make any assumptions about our next budget. We have started the work, obviously, on planning it. When it comes to healthcare and federal investments in our really important and really strained healthcare system, my colleague, Minister LeBlanc, has put it very, very well, that the federal government is working closely, and I would say effectively, with our provincial and territorial partners. We understand that Canadians are really worried and frustrated and frightened, actually, in many parts of the country about the state of the healthcare system. And we know that we need to work together to make it better. The federal government is committed to doing that. And yes, that does mean some more investment, but it also means a focus on being sure we get the results that Canadians quite rightly expect of us from those investments. Alors, aujourd'hui, je ne suis pas ici aujourd'hui pour faire des annonces concernant le budget du prochaine année. Mais je peux répéter ce que mon collègue, le ministre LeBlanc, a très bien dit, et c'est qu'on est en train de travailler sur l'enjeu très important de les soins de santé autour du Canada. Comme le ministre LeBlanc a dit, on a maintenant, de notre point de vue, des discussions constructives, productives. Le fédéral est très clair qu'on comprend les frustrations, les inquiétudes des Canadiens et Canadiennes. On est d'accord qu'on doit travailler ensemble pour améliorer les soins de santé. On va le faire, on va investir de plus, mais nous comprenons également que pour les Canadiens, la chose importante, ce n'est pas le niveau des investissements. La chose importante, c'est les résultats. Et nous sommes absolument convaincus qu'on peut et qu'on doit faire de plus. Et comme le ministre LeBlanc a dit, je suis optimiste. Nous tous comprenons en bout de ligne que c'est un enjeu important et on est en train de travailler ensemble pour le résoudre. Merci.
Merci. Next question, please.
This is for Mayor Tory. Since Minister Mulroney didn't really give a clear answer, I want to reiterate the question from my colleague about the TTC line over in Scarborough and Eglinton Crosstown LRT. It's clearly over budget. There's allegations that Metrolinx doesn't actually have a clear plan. The people want answers. Will there be a public inquiry?
Well, myself, I don't think a public inquiry is the answer. I think the answer is to get on with getting it finished. And, you know, when it was suggested to me yesterday that Metrolinx doesn't have a plan, I'm sure they do. But I think it is time for greater transparency of the fact there is a plan, some greater specific information with respect to the dates involved with those plans, and what the financial consequences might be. But I know when I came to office 8 years ago, the Spadina University subway line was in a similar situation where they said it might be years before it was finished. And I, at that time, in conjunction with the then CEO of the TTC, called in some people who were specialists in taking projects that had problems and sorting the problems out and getting it finished. And we got it finished years ahead of when they told us it was going to be finished. In this case, we're not years away from this being finished. We don't know exactly when it's going to be, but the answer is it must be as soon as possible. I think public inquiries, generally speaking, in instances like this, only are good for lawyers because you'd have squads of lawyers over there asking questions, and there's nothing wrong with asking questions, but I don't think it's going to solve any kind of a problem in the short term. I think the focus should be on applying every possible resource, including additional outside experts if necessary, to sort out the issues and get this done so that people can be riding on it in the short term, which I think is probably the approach that's being taken.
Absolutely. My follow-up here, considering there's been roughly about $1 million proposed from the federal and province for the new Bloor-Yonge extension, or rather capacity improvements, I'm sure people want to know exactly where is that money going to, how will the capacity be improved. I know a lot of people want to see blockades on trains to stop trespassers on the tracks. It's a big problem for delays on the TTC for daily commuters. Is that something that will be part of these improvements?
Well, I think most of the money, and I indicated what the specific projects were that make up the bulk of this investment, which is to expand the platforms. Right now, when you go to Bloor-Yonge, and I'm often there, the platforms are narrower than should be the case for crowds of the size that are using that station, hundreds of thousands of people every day. So if you look, the main Bloor-Yonge platform on the University-Yonge subway line is going to be expanded, as will alterations be made to the Bloor-Danforth subway platform below that. And of course, all of that involves tremendous alteration of buildings. It involves underground infrastructure that has to be changed, and some of that work and a lot of the design work work has already been done to facilitate the investment of $1.5 billion. It will make a difference because it will be safer, which I think has got to be our top priority, but it will make a difference as well because when you have people moving on and off the trains faster, you can move more trains through the station. And that, together with the huge investment our governments collectively have made in the automatic train control system, will see a very significant increase in capacity. The automatic train control system already is increasing the capacity of the Yonge University Spadina line by 20%, and this will make additional capacity available as well as safer platforms. So it sounds like a lot of money to alter platforms, but we're talking major underground infrastructure here, and for all the expansion you do, you often have to move hydro and other kinds of other infrastructure that is already in the ground, and so that's the work that will get done.
We'll take one and then get a follow-up.
Hello, this one's for Mayor Tory as well, for my first one. You mentioned it earlier, just the stabbing yesterday at the High Park Station. So you did mention that you want to sit down with all parties to find a solution. I'm just wondering what kind of concrete measures you can take immediately, really, to make the TTC safer.
Well, one of the things we've done, and we should remember, I mean, the TTC, and this is not to be complacent about what happened yesterday, it was a horrific event and it was a tragedy, and so I don't underestimate that at all. But the TTC remains a very safe system that moves millions of people every day safely. And we've already taken measures in the past and even in the current circumstance to increase the presence of different kinds of people, special constables, streets to homes, outreach workers, police officers on the system, and that kind of work will continue. There's also discussion at the present time about having some additional resources that will be in the budget for next year to enhance that presence, that physical presence on the system. Those discussions were underway before this terrible incident, and we will continue with those discussions. I will sit down next week with the police chief and with the CEO of the TTC to discuss what else we can do. I do want to comment, though, on two other matters, because I think they're very much related, not necessarily to this particular case, but to the broader issue of safety on the TTC. The first is mental health. We simply have to do a better job, and I spoke to the Prime Minister directly about that in the meeting the big city mayors had with him on Tuesday of this week. I met on Wednesday with the Minister of Mental Health for the provincial government, and we are dropping the ball on this. We're dropping the ball collectively, but most of it is part of the healthcare system. And a lot of what people tell me, including a big meeting I had with employers this week talking about people coming back to work, is that the presence of people who have mental illness, and this is not blaming them, they are victims and they are people who have an illness and they're not getting properly looked after in our system, the healthcare system. And we simply have to step up and make sure that we start to make the investments so those people have somewhere to go other than wander up and down subway cars, which is what happens. And they scare people and they make people anxious. And we have to do better than that. And the second is the state of the law. I mean, the law has, and I'm not saying this is in any way connected to yesterday, but it's connected to the general issue of safety on the TTC. There are still people who commit violent acts who shouldn't be walking the streets. And I've talked about this repeatedly, but I'll talk about it again just because I have the opportunity to do so in response to a terrible tragedy and in the presence of my colleagues in public life. I mean, we have to address the bail laws in this country and address why there are so many people that have proven records of endangering others or a multiple number of allegations outstanding against them in respect of things like guns. And we have to improve the sentencing laws to just make sure that people who are repeated offenders are not able to do that kind of thing on the transit system or anywhere else. It's just part of a broader issue of violence in the city that, you know, some areas of the record have improved this year, others have not. And I don't really care because until it gets down to zero, I can't be satisfied that we're doing everything we can or that we're in a satisfactory state in terms of safety in the city. So we'll continue to work at it, and that will be reflected to some extent as well in the budgets that will come forward in the new year.
Thank you, Mayor Tory. My follow-up is for Minister LeBlanc. Un peu comme la dernière question, vous pouvez répondre en français et en anglais. C'est similaire, mais les négociations sur les transferts en santé aux provinces sont vraiment au point mort là, et affectent les relations avec les provinces, évidemment. Est-ce que c'est temps pour le premier ministre qui s'en mêle, qui s'assoit vraiment avec les provinces et qui règle la question?
Ça ne vous surprendra pas que je ne partage pas le préambule de votre question. Les discussions ne sont pas mortes. Je vous ai dit, hier soir, j'ai soupé avec un premier ministre. J'ai parlé à un autre premier ministre hier en avant-midi. Si ça constitue des discussions qui sont mortes, évidemment, je ne partage pas ce point de vue-là. Le premier ministre parle à ses homologues aussi. C'est la même chose pour M. Duclos, la ministre Freeland. Je sais que vous aimeriez avoir tout le monde autour d'une grande table pour négocier en public. Nous ne croyons pas que c'est la meilleure façon d'arriver à une entente, comme Mme Freeland a dit, qui sera dans l'intérêt des patients, des utilisateurs et des personnes qui travaillent dans le système de soins de santé. Moi, je ne partage pas du tout le pessimisme de certaines personnes qui veulent prétendre qu'on ne peut pas arriver à une entente qui sera dans l'intérêt de tous les Canadiens. Mme Freeland l'a bien dit, nous partageons entièrement l'inquiétude de tous les Canadiens et leurs gouvernements provinciaux, mais surtout des Canadiens sur l'importance d'avoir un système de soins de santé de première classe, de classe mondiale, accessible à tout le monde. Il y a des défis qui sont importants. La bonne nouvelle, c'est que le gouvernement fédéral a accepté d'être un partenaire important, y compris investir davantage. Et c'est le genre de discussion que nous avons. Le premier ministre a dit à Mme Freeland et à moi et à M. Duclos qu'il est toujours prêt à rencontrer les premiers ministres des provinces. Et d'ailleurs, c'est quelque chose qu'il fait presque sur une base hebdomadaire. Et ça ne vous surprendra pas qu'il soulève les questions de soins de santé. Alors, si ça constitue des discussions qui sont mortes, je ne serai pas du tout d'accord avec ça et je vois ça avec votre sourire aussi. Merci.
Et une dernière question.
For Minister Mulroney, I just wanted to follow up on the questions about the crosstown. Part of what the documents that were obtained by the CBC show is that there was no credible kind of path towards a completion and getting it done. And I just want to know if that's a concern to you, because it certainly was, I think, a concern to a great deal of the public that saw the story, and the fact that the cost keeps ballooning, gone up by another $1 billion.
Look, the path towards completion is to working through these final technical issues that Crosslinks and Metrolinks are currently negotiating. But the path to opening is to make sure that we have a system that's well tested and ready to open safely. And, you know, as I said, I share the frustration. This has been a very long go for so many people, people who live along the line, who work along the line, commuters through the city of Toronto. It takes hours to get onto the 401. And so everybody wants to see the construction come to an end, and they want to see the Eglinton Crosstown open. But the most important thing, and we learned this from Ottawa, from the Ottawa LRT and from the Justice's report, is that you can't rush technical issues. We have to make sure that it opens safely and that it runs well. And so that's our priority.
Thank you very much. That concludes today's press conference. Thank you, everyone.